Hey, welcome. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful yet kind of invisible forces that runs our entire digital world, the API. Seriously, it's the secret engine that makes pretty much everything on the internet just work.
I mean, have you ever really stopped to think about it? How does your food delivery app know the restaurant's menu? Or how can a travel site pull up flight details from hundreds of different airlines in just a few seconds? Well, the answer to all of that, the magic behind the scenes, is the API.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about your digital waiter. Then, the universal language they all speak. We'll get into the 4 basic commands they use, cover how they handle identity and permission, and finally, look at the secret key that holds it all together. Sound good? All right, let's jump in.
Okay, so let's start with what is honestly the best way to think about an API. Just imagine you're sitting in a restaurant.
See, the API, which stands for Application Programming Interface, is basically that waiter. You're the customer, and the server, the big computer with all the data you want, that's the kitchen. Now, you wouldn't just barge into the kitchen and start looking for your food, right? Of course not. You give your order to the waiter, the API. The API goes to the kitchen, gets what you need, and brings it right back to your table. It's the perfect middleman, letting 2 different pieces of software talk to each other without either one needing to know the messy details of how the other works.
But for that whole system to work, the customer, the waiter, and the kitchen all have to be speaking the same language. So how do all these different apps, built by different people using totally different technologies, actually understand each other?
Well, this is a real problem. Imagine your app speaks JavaScript, but the server it needs data from speaks Python. They're built on completely different programming languages. It's like you trying to order dinner in French when you only speak English. It's just not going to work. You need a translator.
And that translator, that universal language of the internet, is a simple text format called JSON.
Now, the beautiful thing about JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation, is just how simple it is. The name doesn't really matter. What matters is that every single major programming language can read and write it without any trouble. So your app writes its order down in JSON, the API delivers it, and the server's kitchen understands it perfectly. Then the server packages up the response in JSON, and your app gets it. Problem solved. It's the perfect universal translator.
Okay, so we know how they talk to each other, but what can you actually ask the waiter to do? Well, it pretty much boils down to 4 basic commands, or, 4 types of orders.
And sticking with our restaurant analogy makes this super easy. A GET request is just for reading data. That's like asking the waiter to get you the menu. A POST request is for creating something new. You're posting a new order to the kitchen. A PUT request is for updating something that's already there, like telling the waiter, hey, can you change my side to fries instead? And well, delete is exactly what it sounds like. You're telling the waiter to cancel an item on your order. And that's really it. Pretty much everything you do online is just some combination of those 4 things.
All right, this is all making sense, but it does bring up a pretty big question, doesn't it? How does the waiter know who you are? And more importantly, how do they stop you from walking over to another table and canceling their order? This, of course, is all about security.
To get this right, you have to understand 2 different ideas. First is authentication. That's just proving who you are. Think of logging in with your username and password. That's you showing your ID. But the second part is authorization. This is all about what you're allowed to do. For example, just because you're authenticated on social media doesn't mean you're authorized to delete my photos. The server checks your permissions for every single request. But imagine how annoying it would be if you had to show your ID and password for every single like, comment, or click. You'd go crazy. So how does the server remember that you're logged in and know what you're allowed to do? Well, the answer is a very clever little digital token. It's called a JWT, or a JSON Web Token. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like a digital VIP pass or maybe a wristband at a concert. The first time you log in, you prove who you are. Then, the server gives you the special encrypted token. From then on, you don't have to prove your identity over and over. You just show them the wristband.
So the flow is super efficient. You log in one time with your password, the server checks you out and sends you back that unique JWT. Then, from that point forward, every single thing you do, every GET, POST, or DELETE request, your app automatically sticks that token onto the order. The server sees the valid token and instantly knows, oh yeah, that's Dave, and he's allowed to do this. No password needed again.
So you might be wondering, okay, but what stops someone from just copying my token and pretending to be me?
And that's a great question. The magic is in how the token is created. It's cryptographically signed by the server using a secret key that only the server knows. So, when your app sends a request with a token, the server uses its secret key to check the signature. If it doesn't match, if anyone has messed with it even a tiny bit, the request is thrown out immediately.
So let's just do a quick recap. APIs are the digital waiters connecting everything on the internet. They all speak that universal language, JSON. They perform those 4 basic commands, get, post, put, and delete, and they keep everything secure using authentication to check who you are, authorization to check what you can do, and JWTs as those secure VIP passes to make it all run smoothly.
You know, this whole idea is the foundation of massive companies. They built billion-dollar businesses just by creating a great API that solves a problem, like processing payments or sending text messages, so that other developers don't have to. And this isn't just a tool for huge tech giants. Now that you know the basic recipe, the waiter, the language, the commands, and the security, what problem could you solve? What service could you build that other apps could simply order from? Now that you're in on the secret, the possibilities are pretty much endless.